the table. Thank you very much for your support. Come and sign the petition here at the table. Thank you. We're sending our laddies and lassies to die in Iraq and Afghanistan. No after the 18th of September. Petition. Thank you. Come and sign the petition for independence.
No, the difference between socialists like myself and nationalists like Alex Salmond is I look at the world and I see a world divided into classes between the rich and the poor, regardless of your nationality, your gender, your sexuality, the colour of your skin, any of that. The world is divided between the rich and the poor, the ruling class and the working class. And that's a standard, classic point of understanding for socialists. And I think, I always say that the SSP stands in the tradition of supporting independence that James Connolly and John Maclean stood in 100 years ago, and theirs was a world view that said, yes, you have different classes, the rich and the poor, but you also have people, the working class falls into nation states, and the national question is a reality that you can't just wish away. So for us, I think socialists don't see the world as divided by nations that somehow everyday Scots are good. Working class people in Scotland are exploited by rich Scots as much as anybody else. So it's a fairly profound distinction. But if the SSP is campaigning as we are for an independent socialist Scotland, it could be argued, well, we're 6 months away from independence. We're probably a bit longer away from socialism in Scotland. So these things can journey at different rates. And so we've got a greater opportunity to become independent first. Then we have become a socialist country first, and that's why we support it in the way that we do.
Sign the petition here at the table. That's what happens in a no vote. Sign the petition here at the table. Sign the petition.
I mean, Scotland, when you travel the world, it probably as SSP members have done, you go and see other places, don't you? And you get an appreciation that what we take for granted isn't always available in countries. In Africa, there's no such thing as inside toilets in houses. There's no running water. They don't have electricity that they can take for granted, They don't have buses, public transport to get them from one city to another all that readily. That's not just Africa and the third world. Places in the Eastern Europe, the standard of living when you get across the world is nowhere near as high as ours. And it's because ours as a country, it's not just based in oil and gas, though that's a huge asset. Renewable energy, construction, manufacturing, whiskey, food and drink, life sciences, tourism, IT, universities, public sector that's profitable, all of that. And as I've said at meetings, I always make clear, Scotland's a wealthy country because its wealth comes from a diverse range of sources. And so what we're essentially saying is that Scotland, all the taxes and profits that are currently generated here that go to London stay here. All the revenue that currently goes straight to London from the North Sea and things like that, the duty on whiskey and alcohol, etc., goes straight to the UK Treasury, stays here. Then the income that comes to Scotland, that's gross domestic product on an annual basis, is manifestly, potentially even doubled in the average year. So the issue isn't Scotland won't be a wealthy country capable of being independent. The issue for me is one about where does that wealth get spent? Who gets looked after? Is it just going to trickle down into the same rich hands and millionaires and billionaires just now? And that's probably the SNP's model. Or as the SSP say, the poor are first in line. The pensioners that are living in fuel poverty are first in line. People are living tough lives and denied basics that the rest of us take for granted. They have to be first in line. Nobody gets left behind in an independent socialist Scotland.
For independence for Scotland, come and sign the petition. Sign the petition. Thank you.
Well, I think the important thing we're trying to go over is that, Alex Salmond probably is in many ways what people think of most with the independence campaign, but it's wider than just the SNP. Yes, Scotland includes the SNP, includes the Scottish Socialist Party, the Greens, Labour for Independence, lots of people who certainly wouldn't describe themselves as nationalists. And not only are we part of it, we've got a distinct philosophy that's separate for the SNP. Essentially, that's what the grouping on Saturday will discuss, and it's coming together to discuss a left independence manifesto, if you like.
Remind them that we're voting for independence on the 18th of September.
There's lots of things I think that the left collectively would hold to that are different for the SNP, and I think Salmond has done us the service of speaking 2 days ago at the New Statesman in London and making it clear that his is a neoliberal economic model he sees for independent Scotland. So the left, and certainly including the Scottish Socialist Party, We don't have any reluctance to increase the top rate of tax by 50 pence. We think the rich should pay more taxes. He doesn't, we do. We don't favour, for example, cutting corporation tax to levels as low as 12 pence in the pound, which is what Salmon proposes. I mean, I remember, you know, when I was starting off in my political journey, I was an accountant, and Thatcher had set corporation tax levels way back in the beginning at 52 pence in the pound. That's what corporation tax was in the beginning under Thatcher. Hardly a socialist, was you? And now Salmon wants to reduce it to 12 pence. So the left doesn't agree with that. We don't agree with the SNP's membership of NATO. We don't agree with keeping the monarchy. We don't agree with a conservative vision of independence, you know, with a small c. And I think that's what the left gets to debate on Saturday, all those different manifestations of a much more radical idea of independence.
Come and sign the petition for an independent socialist Scotland. Send your own message to David Cameron. Remind him that we're voting for independence.
How has it transformed the SSP? Yeah, I think apart from anything else, it's given the SSP a purpose again. You know, we're a political party with a radical political agenda, and independence has been part of our DNA for 15 years. Now, the fact that the country is involved in the most important political battle for independence in 300 years has given the SSP a very clear focus to our work, and, you know, we were happy to do it, but the fact is that our priority has been set for us by the fact that there's an independence referendum on 18th of September this year, and therefore everything for us comes secondary to that.
Thank you very much for your support. Come sign the petition.
I mean, I'm working on a pamphlet for the SSP on the case for a modern democratic republic, and Colin at the university are discussing that as a subject, right? And I think that's probably the most profound manifestation between socialists, democrats, who are in favour of an elected head of state, a representative head of state, a head of state that's accountable, can be replaced, and above all is representative, is like one of us. The SNP, remember, want to keep the Queen as the head of state, so that's a fairly profound thing. It's a profound difference. And the other profound difference is that the SNP went through this change, this metamorphosis from a party that had been 30 years opposed to Scotland's membership of NATO, 18 months ago decided they wanted an independent Scotland to be part of a warmongering alliance, which of course the SSP would never indulge that. You know, for us that's core of our internationalist beliefs. So they're two fairly profound differences, but probably, since to most people in the street and most working people, they might be seemed a bit esoteric, a republic, you know, NATO. What they're looking for is bread and butter changes, you know, a profound increase in their standard of living, the end of poverty in Glasgow, the end of fuel poverty in Edinburgh, the end of pensioner poverty in Dundee, you know, that manifestation says that, see all this extra wealth that we have in the independence movement, it starts to get distributed to those who need it most, and that's what the SSP can guarantee, that the SSP, frankly, or the SNP, I beg your pardon, have no real history of ever delivering on.
Remind them that we'll be voting for independence on the 18th of September, and after that there won't be any more.
Well, it's not a new claim, is it? They've been claiming oil's going to run out ever since they discovered it in 1967, and here we are, nearly 50 years, certainly 40 years later, and they're talking about another 35 years potentially. And of course, I mean, I would be the first to accept that science and technology means that these are movable feasts. I think in 1967 they wouldn't have the technology to get the oil out the North Sea that they're taking out today, but of course it has developed. So most of the oil experts, and that's who we all go by, are saying there's another 25 or 30 years worth of reserves there, you know, possibly as much as £2 trillion worth of value, given the way oil prices are in the world today. So it's a considerable resource, and I think, you know, whilst the Scottish Socialist Party we're clearly conscious of climate change and what fossil fuels do, and there's that whole debate, we don't agree with the Greens that this major asset should be left to rot in the ground. We are for extracting it, but that goes in tandem with using it. If you extract it and use it at a lesser rate, and you use more renewable sources, you know, another complementary, less damaging technologies and fuels, then it can last a lot longer. So for us, I think, I always say at public meetings, you know, the no side, this is potentially for me their weakest argument about oil. They give it, oh, it's about to run out, oh, it's worth nothing. And the truth is, 95% of countries in the world will give their eye teeth for Scotland's oil reserves because it's been a massive windfall. We didn't know it was there in the 1950s. It's discovered in the 60s. It'll last for another 25 years. And I think the key piece of wisdom that has to be extracted by us as a people is we have to learn to do it what the Norwegians did. They're planning for it to run out, and they've got an £800 billion sovereign wealth fund which is used to invest in those replacement industries so that when the oil runs out, Norway maintains its place atop the United Nations League of Wealthy Countries. That's enlightened, isn't it? That's what Scotland should do and still can do.
Petition for independence. Come and sign the petition.
You know, UKIP may well top the poll in England and Wales in these European Parliament elections, right? Which is something the SSP doesn't welcome. It would be an outcome everybody's predicting. But for the SSP to see a openly xenophobic, racist, anti-claimant, anti-immigrant party topping the polls in England and Wales is not something I think anybody of progressive mentality would welcome. But paradoxically, it may well play to the independence campaign's advantage in as much as it shows the different political centre of gravity between Scotland and England. Scotland's social democratic, England neoliberal, prepared to blame claimants and immigrants, leave the EU, that kind of mentality. And I think, whilst I don't welcome it, it's possible that it adds to the support for yes in May when these results are declared.
And what is your opinion of Nigel Farage?
I think Nigel Farage is a tosser, quite frankly. This is a merchant banker. I seen him interviewed on TV a couple of weeks ago. He's doing a meeting back in the City of London and saying when he was a merchant bank fund manager, he never employed women because they would go away and they'd have babies and lose all their client base. You think this guy's a dinosaur. He's an absolute phony and a dinosaur, and he wants to blame immigrants and claimants for a crisis caused by merchant bankers like him. The guy's a total fraud, and he only gets what he does because, unfortunately, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the BBC, even the Tories and Labour have laid the groundwork for this racism and xenophobia over 25 years. And the left, unfortunately, in England has been too weak to add a counterweight, which is to say immigrants are welcome. They make this country richer by coming here. They make this country better, multicultural. All the immigrants that have come to Scotland are welcome. And Scotland itself's a nation of immigrants. My family came here from Ireland, like hundreds of thousands of others. Other families came down for the Highlands. That's immigration. When you're forced off the land in Caithness and Sutherland and Mull and Skye and Lochaber, and you have to come to Glasgow, that's immigration. That's what it is. So we know that well, and we've no time, thankfully, for the pus-ridden rubbish that UKIP and Farage espouse.
For Scotland, come and sign the petition and send your own.
The currency thing, I think, it's like chat. Every bus stop's now got their currency expert in it, so much as that people discussed all the different options and that. Fascinating, because I think there's a sense where people thought they were confused and then realised there's only 4 options, so you couldn't be that confused, And I think the currency debate is probably settled well for the Yes campaign in as much as there's a unanimity, which is to say if George Osborne's going to come up here, Lord Snooty, public school boy, come up in the dead of night almost and tell us what we can't do, Scots have a tendency to just look him in the eye and say, don't tell us what we can and can't do. So if he's telling us we can't use it, I think everybody's bloody minded enough to say, do you know what, we're going to continue to use it. We'll use it because you're telling us we can't, and in good time we'll choose the own currency that we want. And the Scottish Socialist Party's on record as saying that we think economically and politically it makes greater sense for us to have our own currency in charge of our own fiscal and monetary policies. We set interest rates, borrowing rates, we set budgets. And so I think, funnily enough, the population in Scotland is coming round to the Scottish Socialist Party's point of view that we'll keep the pound, the negotiations will take the journey they make. If they are stupid enough to say that they're going to say we can't have it, then we'll say fine. Then plan A.1, as I've referred to it, is that we have our own currency. And I think one of the things people should always remember, Scotland already has its own currency. See the Clydesdale Bank £5 notes, Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland notes you take to London, and folk look at you in the shops and go, hey, what kind of tender is this, monopoly money? That's our own currency. So, I think in a way we're already wise to it, aren't we?
Remind them that we're voting for independence on the 18th of September.
Well, the first thing, the SSP's went through a remarkable period of growth in the last 18 months, and it coincides with our engagement in Yes Scotland. It was launched at Fountain Bridge just after the local government elections in 2012. We were part of it. We continue to play a prominent part in it. I sit on the Yes Scotland Advisory Board representing the SSP. Yes Scotland's made up of 3 parties. there's the SNP, there's the SSP, and there's the Greens, and that's been terrific for us. And you know, Callum and I work in the applications that have come through the website alone. There's already more than 500 people have applied to join the SSP, which has in effect doubled our active membership at least in the last year. With new branches in Ayrshire, new branches in Dundee, new branches in Stirling, new branches in Glasgow, new branches in Aberdeen. There's party members getting back involved in things, and I think it's fun to be in the SSP again. It's fun, it's important. The SSP's got a very prominent role to play this. And you know, on the 18th of September, when we get the yes vote that we're going to get, every SSP member can quite proudly turn to their neighbour or their family or their workmates and say, I did that. The SSP, we did that. Not on our own, but we did it as much as anybody. We've played, you know, a Storming role in this, a Sterling role in it. Been at all the rallies and meetings, we contribute positively. All the anxieties that our other partners in Yes Scotland had that, oh no, this might backfire given the SSP's previous history. You know, you can't work with these people, etc. You know, as we assured them at the time, that all came to nothing. They speak very highly of us. I think the SSP has done itself immense good, and I look forward to thousands more people joining in the months ahead.